You will not believe the kind of day I just had. I woke up on a bright Saturday morning, ready to grab my oversized coffee and enjoy a peaceful weekend in my quiet suburban paradise. But the universe had other plans. I stepped outside, and my car was gone. Not moved, not misplaced, completely missing. At first I thought, wait, did I forget where I parked? Am I actually losing it? But nope. The street was empty, just the faint smell of burnt rubber and the sinking feeling that someone had decided to ruin my weekend in true HOA fashion. Enter Karen. Not just any Karen, the HOA president herself. The queen of bylaws, citations, and unsolicited life lessons. Apparently she had decided to run her own personal car patrol because, according to her, my car violated HOA regulations. Now, I'm not exactly a rebel, but I do like my freedom. And nothing says freedom like parking your own car in front of your own house without a self-appointed neighborhood cop threatening to fine you for it. So, I ran back inside, grabbed my laptop, and searched for any kind of violation notice. Nothing. No email. No letter, no call. Just poof. My car had vanished. Naturally, I called the towing company thinking maybe it was some kind of mistake. Big mistake. The company said they didn't even know who authorized the tow. Turns out our dear HOA president had filled out some sketchy online form claiming she had the legal right to remove my vehicle. Here's where it gets good, the tow company told me. Ma'am, we might actually get sued if we go through with this. So, I did what any mildly unhinged but responsible homeowner would do. I grabbed my phone, started recording, and prepared for what was clearly about to become viral-worthy HOA chaos. When I got to the scene, my neighbors were already gathering like we were about to film an episode of Suburban Justice Live Edition. Bob from next door was there with his giant coffee mug. Marcy was shouting about how HOA rules were basically the 10 Commandments, and little Timmy was zipping around on his scooter pretending to be a police officer. It was absolute chaos, hilarious, dramatic, and better than Saturday morning TV. Then, the star of the show arrived. Karen strutted down the street in oversized sunglasses, clipboard in hand like she was about to declare martial law in the cul-de-sac. "Excuse me," she yelled, pointing dramatically. "Your car is in violation of HOA Code 4.2.1b. I blinked. What code is that exactly?" She said with total confidence. "The one about cars being here. Out there? Yeah. Very official." By the time the tow truck rolled up, the driver looked like he'd aged a decade just from dealing with HOA nonsense. He sighed, handed me a clipboard, and muttered, "Lady, if this turns out to be real, I'm going to need a lawyer for my lunch break." I couldn't stop laughing. The absurdity was off the charts. This wasn't just a car being towed. It was the start of something way bigger and way funnier than anyone expected. This was Karen trying to enforce an invisible law while accidentally digging her own legal grave. By noon, things had gone from ridiculous to legendary. The tow company, who apparently had a conscience, or maybe just a healthy fear of lawsuit, called to let me know they'd filed a false authorization complaint against Karen herself. Yes, you heard that right. The same woman who thought she could boss me around had just trapped herself in her own paperwork. And the thought of seeing her face when she realized she was about to be buried under more legal documents than her HOA binder? Priceless. The best part? I got to watch it all unfold live. My neighbors had turned into a full-blown audience, some laughing, some gasping, and little Timmy circling the driveway on his scooter yelling, "Justice!" That's when it hit me. Suburban life could be completely absurd, unintentionally hilarious, and deeply satisfying, all at once. By the end of the day, my car was safely back in my driveway. Karen was fuming. The tow company had a new lunchtime story, and I had the perfect material for my next YouTube video, complete with comedy, chaos, and a moral. Never underestimate what happens when HOA power meets legal paperwork, and a neighborhood with too much free time. But just when I thought it was over, things got even wilder. Karen was pacing the street like a caffeinated peacock, clutching her clipboard like it was a weapon of mass destruction. She looked ready to declare martial law right there on my property, absolutely convinced she could enforce her imaginary rules. I sat on my porch, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching her flail like she was starring in her own reality show. The confidence in her nonsense was honestly impressive. "You're in violation," she yelled, her voice cracking. You must pay the towing fees immediately. I blinked, trying not to laugh. Oh, really? Did the court send you that memo, or are we improvising today? Her face turned bright red. In a last-ditch attempt to sound official, she whipped out her phone and started muttering about unauthorized vehicles, neighborhood law and bylaws as if reciting some suburban magic spell. Then, the tow truck returned. The driver, looking completely done with the drama, stepped out and said calmly, "Ma'am, your authorization was fake. You could actually be sued." Karen froze. You could practically hear her ego deflating. That's when the neighbors jumped in. Marcy, the self-proclaimed HOA law expert, ran over with a random stack of papers she swore were official citations. Bob from down the street started filming, narrating like a sports commentator. And here we have it, folks. The HOA faces its reckoning today. Even little Timmy joined the action, zooming around on his scooter shouting, "Protect the driveway. Protect the driveway." Then came the grand finale. Karen, still desperate to prove she had control, tried to physically block the tow truck from leaving. Picture this. A clipboard-wielding HOA president standing in front of a 2-ton tow truck like it's some kind of suburban wrestling match. It was dramatic. It was ridiculous. And it was the exact moment everyone realized that karma had officially clocked in for overtime. The driver, patient as ever, gently nudged Karen aside and warned, "Ma'am, we're professionals. You, however, are creating a felony." The entire street erupted in laughter. Phones were out everywhere, capturing every absurd second of the chaos. But Karen wasn't done. Oh no. She stormed back to her car and began honking like she was summoning backup from the HOA army. And then it happened. The most unexpected twist of all. Mr. Whiskers, the neighbor's cat, leapt onto her car hood like a furry superhero. He sat there, tail flicking, staring at her with pure judgment. Karen froze, caught between the blaring horn, the cat's death stare, and the laughter echoing down the street. It was peak suburban chaos, part comedy, part courtroom drama, and all karma. Just when it seemed the madness couldn't go any further, a black sedan pulled up. Out stepped the tow company's lawyer, tall, calm, and intimidating in a way that made the entire crowd go silent. Karen's confidence evaporated instantly. The lawyer's voice was firm but polite. "Ma'am, you filed a false authorization. That's a serious offense. You are personally liable." Her jaw dropped. The clipboard slipped from her hands and hit the pavement with a pathetic thud. The same woman who once ruled the HOA with an iron fist now looked like an extra in a courtroom drama. Only this episode was being filmed live on the sidewalk. Popcorn wasn't required, but definitely recommended. The lawyer calmly explained her legal situation while the neighbors whispered, snickered, and of course kept recording. Karen tried to argue, but every word came out weaker than the last. Meanwhile, Mr. Whiskers remained perched on the car hood, the silent, judgmental witness to her downfall. Finally, the tow truck drove away, my car safe and sound, and Karen stood frozen, red-faced and defeated, realizing her power move had just turned into the biggest embarrassment of her HOA career. By evening, the neighborhood was buzzing. People replayed the videos, laughing at slow-motion clips of Karen's dramatic gestures and wild expressions. Theories flew about what she might try next, though honestly, she'd already hit the peak of public humiliation. As I sat back on my porch, coffee in hand, I couldn't help but laugh. Who would have thought one Saturday morning could turn into the perfect mix of comedy, chaos, and justice? All it took was a power-hungry HOA president, a tow truck, and one overly confident cat. By now, Karen had officially earned her new title, the most embarrassed HOA president in history. Her confidence had vanished like morning fog, replaced by panic, disbelief, and that unmistakable, "I should have just minded my own business" look. She stood on her porch, pacing and muttering into her phone like she was on a call with an imaginary legal team. Meanwhile, the tow company's lawyer stood calmly nearby, explaining she was facing real fines and personal liability for filing false authorization documents. The neighbors gathered again, some laughing, others shaking their heads, and plenty still recording every second for posterity. Or YouTube. Marcy from down the street waved a new stack of papers, claiming Karen herself now had violations on her own property. Bob narrated dramatically like it was breaking news. In a stunning twist of suburban justice, the HOA president faces the consequences of her own actions. And little Timmy, circling the scene on his scooter, shouted, "Justice is coming!" Like the world's smallest superhero, the entire block had turned into a live-action comedy series, complete with laughter, gasps, and karma served extra crispy. Karen, realizing her personal crusade against my car had officially backfired, tried to salvage what was left of her dignity, but the neighborhood had already made up its mind. This wasn't just an HOA drama anymore. It was legendary suburban justice. Karen tried to justify her actions, insisting, "I was only following the rules. It was for the safety of the neighborhood." The crowd collectively groaned. Bob raised an eyebrow, pointed at her empty clipboard, and said, "Ma'am, the only thing endangered today was your credibility." It was brutal, but painfully accurate. Then, the tow company's lawyer delivered the final blow. "You authorized a false tow. You are personally responsible for damages, potential fines, and legal fees. My client has every right to take this to court." Karen's face went from red to purple in seconds. Her hands shook. Her phone slipped from her grasp, and there, still perched proudly on a neighbor's car, Mr. Whiskers glared at her with the cold, silent judgment of suburban karma. That cat deserved an award. Then came the cherry on top. The HOA board, who had been suspiciously quiet the whole time, scrambled into an emergency Zoom meeting, one that everyone in the neighborhood could see on the shared community screen. Board members whispered frantically, trying to distance themselves from Karen's disaster. It was like watching a soap opera unfold in real life, dramatic, awkward, and impossible to look away. Some neighbors brought snacks. Others started placing bets on whether Karen would survive the day without fainting. I stood there, coffee in hand, watching the chaos like a front-row guest at the greatest suburban comedy ever performed. Karen eventually tried to issue a public apology, but it landed about as well as a screen door on a submarine. "I didn't know the form was invalid. I thought it was legal," she stammered. The audience, in neighbors, live-stream viewers, and anyone remotely invested, all groaned in unison. Her words had the emotional power of soggy toast. Meanwhile, Bob recorded every moment, narrating like a Shakespearean announcer with perfect timing. "And thus the tyrant falls, not by sword but by paperwork. And a neighborhood cat." By evening, legal notices had already been filed. My car sat safely back in my driveway, while Karen's credibility hit an all-time low. The block buzzed with laughter, gossip, and disbelief. Little Timmy, still circling on his scooter, proudly declared himself neighborhood hero of the day. Marcy and Bob debated whether Karen should resign immediately or just take a long vacation to rethink her life choices. The mix of comedy, shock, and poetic justice had transformed what started as a petty HOA dispute into a full-blown suburban legend. As the sun set, I finally sat down with my now lukewarm coffee, smiling at how perfectly everything had unfolded. It was surreal, chaotic, and absolutely hilarious. A simple towing incident turned into a legal spectacle featuring a dramatic HOA president, a neighborhood full of witnesses, and a judgmental cat who somehow stole the show. And the best part? Everyone would be talking about it for weeks, like sharing videos, laughing at memes, and replaying the downfall of Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. It was absurd. It was shocking. And it was completely unforgettable. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Every single one helps me bring you more dramatic and satisfying HOA tales. And don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss when justice and karma strike again. I'll see you in the next story, where the drama gets even better and justice gets even sweeter.